The host's introduction. Elena huddled deeper into her armchair, the thick wool blanket scratching against her skin like a reminder of winters past. The stone hearth crackled with fresh pine logs, their sap popping sporadically, and filling the air with a resinous scent that battled the earthy undertones of her simmering venison stew on the cast-iron stove. Outside, the Canadian Rockies stood sentinel, their jagged peaks buried under a blanket of November snow that had fallen relentlessly for hours, transforming the landscape into a monochrome world where sound itself seemed frozen. The wind howled through the pines, rattling the frost-encrusted windows and carrying faint echoes of distant wildlife, perhaps a wolf's lonely call, or just her imagination stirring old fears. Retirement from journalism hadn't been the peaceful retreat she'd envisioned. At 62, Elena's days were filled with the ghosts of stories she'd chased across continents: corrupt officials in Eastern Europe, famine survivors in Africa, and closer to home, the unsolved disappearance of her younger brother Marcus during a family ski outing 30 years ago. He'd vanished into a blizzard, leaving behind only his scarf tangled in a branch. Holidays like this one amplified the ache, turning what should be a time of gratitude into a solitary vigil. She stirred the stew absent-mindedly, the wooden spoon clinking against the pot, and glanced at the stack of letters on the oak table beside her. They'd come from an estate sale in a nearby town, hidden in a weathered trunk amid yellowed newspapers and forgotten trinkets. Each envelope bore no return address, just scrawled postmarks from far-flung places. The accounts inside weren't polished. They were raw, handwritten confessions of disruptions during festive times, moments when the veil of normalcy tore, revealing threats from the human world rather than the supernatural. "Holiday horrors," Elena whispered, her breath fogging the air slightly despite the fire's warmth. In her career, she'd learned that real terror often lurked in the everyday: a stranger's glance, a misplaced object, a whisper in the dark. These letters echoed that truth, speaking of intruders who exploited the chaos of gatherings, turning joy into suspicion. She decided to record them, perhaps for a personal podcast she'd toyed with starting, a way to process her own unresolved grief. The small digital recorder hummed to life on the table, its red light steady like a watchful eye. Sipping her chamomile tea, steam rising in lazy curls that carried hints of honey and lemon, Elena selected the first letter. Postmarked from the Australian outback, it recounted a young artist's fraught visit to her aunt's ranch, where murmurs from a dilapidated barn peeled back layers of family secrets. Elena leaned back, the cabin's log walls creaking under the wind's assault, their knots and grains like ancient runes telling stories of their own. Outside, snowflakes swirled in the beam of her porch light, creating ethereal patterns that danced like forgotten spirits. Then came the knock, sharp, almost rhythmic, cutting through the storm's symphony. Elena froze, her hand tightening on the mug. It couldn't be a visitor. The nearest neighbor was miles away, and the roads were impassable. "Just the wind," she muttered, though her pulse quickened. Memories of Marcus's last night flashing unbidden. A similar storm, a knock dismissed as branches. Shaking it off with the discipline of someone who'd faced worse, she cleared her throat and began reading into the recorder, her voice steady but laced with an undercurrent of unease. It began with the acrid smoke of the barbecue wafting across the parched red earth, drawing family together under a vast, unforgiving sky. But as dusk crept in, the old barn across the yard began to whisper secrets that no one wanted to hear. But as she delved deeper into the letter's pages, Elena couldn't shake the feeling that some shadows weren't content to stay confined to paper. They followed you home, tapping at your door in the dead of night. Expanded Chapter 2, The Whispering Barn. Lila's boots crunched on the sun-baked red soil as she alighted from the rickety bus, the heat of the Australian outback pressing down like a heavy hand. The air thrummed with the incessant buzz of cicadas, their chorus blending with the sharp medicinal tang of eucalyptus leaves rustling in the hot breeze. Thunder grumbled faintly from purple clouds on the horizon, promising a rare storm to break the drought. She'd traveled from Sydney, where her life as a struggling artist revolved around cramped studios and fleeting gallery shows, to this remote ranch for what her Aunt Nora called a Thanksgiving barbecue, an odd tradition Nora had adopted from American films, insisting it was a chance to mend the family rift caused by Lila's long absence after her parents' divorce. Nora waited by the gate, her face etched with lines from years of squinting against the sun, her calloused hands gripping a faded Akubra hat. "About time you showed up, city girl," she teased, pulling Lila into a hug that smelled of hay and sweat. The ranch house, a low-slung structure of corrugated iron and weathered wood, glowed with haphazard string lights strung between gum trees. Cousins milled around the grill, flipping kangaroo steaks that sizzled and spat grease, while children chased lizards through the dust. Conversations flowed over cold beers, tales of failed crops, neighbor disputes, and old pranks from childhood summers. Lila joined in, her laughter genuine at first, but as the sun sank behind the scrubby hills, casting elongated shadows across the yard, a peculiar murmur drifted from the distant barn, like voices muffled by distance, or wind teasing secrets from the cracks. "Did you hear that?" Lila asked, pausing with her fork hovering over a charred vegetable skewer. The sound was low, almost melodic, rising and falling like a conversation just out of reach. Nora glanced toward the barn, her eyes narrowing briefly before she shrugged. "Old place settling, love. Built by your grandpa in the 50s, full of drafts and memories." But Lila's artistic eye caught the unease in her aunt's posture, the way her fingers tightened on her bottle. Family legends whispered in her mind. Nora's former hired hand, Jack, who'd vanished a decade ago amid rumors of a steamy affair with a married neighbor, leaving behind only his truck abandoned by the creek. After the meal, with bellies full and the sky a canopy of twinkling stars, Lila excused herself for a walk. The cooling air carried the metallic scent of impending rain, and her flashlight beams sliced through the darkness as she approached the barn. The door groaned open on rusted hinges, revealing a cavernous interior. Tools dangling from hooks like skeletal fingers, hay bales piled haphazardly, and deep gouges scarring the wooden walls, marks that twisted into shapes resembling frantic words. Help, hide, betrayed. Her heart quickened. These weren't random. Digging deeper, she spotted a rusted chest half buried under feed sacks, its lock brittle with age. Prying it open with a crowbar from the wall, she uncovered faded Polaroids. Nora, younger and radiant, locked in embraces with a man who wasn't her late husband. Jack, his face familiar from old photos. Accompanying letters, yellowed and tear-stained, confessed to a forbidden love affair that ended in jealousy and disappearance. The whispers intensified, then no longer ambient but distinct, soft pleas echoing from the hayloft overhead, laced with desperation. Lila's breath caught, her beam trembling as she ascended the rickety ladder, splinters pricking her palms. At the top, amid bales shrouded in cobwebs, huddled a gaunt teenager, his clothes torn and dirt-streaked, eyes wide with terror. "Please, don't tell," he stammered, a runaway from a nearby town, seeking refuge from an abusive home during the last storm. He'd hidden here, overhearing Nora's late-night confessions to cousins about Jack's fate, and stayed too long, his presence stirring the barn's acoustics into ghostly echoes. Before Lila could respond, he scrambled past her, leaping to the ground and sprinting into the shadowy fields, his footsteps fading into the night. Shaken, Lila returned to the house, the photos tucked in her pocket. Was the boy the only intruder, or had his whispers unearthed deeper guilt, perhaps Nora's role in Jack's vanishing? Rain began to patter on the roof as she lay awake, the storm's rumble mirroring her turmoil. As night deepened, Lila wondered if the runaway would return for shelter, or if something worse, born of buried family sins, was stirring in the endless fields beyond, Expanded, Chapter 3. The Fogged Mirror. Ronan stood before the steamed-up bathroom mirror in the quaint seaside cottage, the relentless crash of Atlantic waves against the rugged Irish cliffs reverberating through the thin walls like a perpetual drumbeat. Rain drummed steadily on the tin roof. The afternoon light filtered through thick fog that blanketed the coastal village, infusing the air with a briny sharpness of salt and decaying seaweed. He'd driven from Dublin with his wife, Siobhan, for this blended family gathering at her parents' stone house, a tradition of hearty roasted lamb, boiled potatoes, and endless storytelling around the peat fire. Relatives packed the small rooms, uncles with booming laughs, aunts clucking over recipes, and nieces darting about with sticky fingers from stolen desserts. As a history teacher, Ronan relished the debates on Celtic myths and local folklore. But now, in this moment of solitude during post-meal cleanup, he sought respite from the chaos. Wiping the mirror with a threadbare towel, he watched as the condensation parted, revealing not just his tired reflection, graying temples, wire-rimmed glasses, but a hazy scrawl emerging like a phantom, "Get out." The letters dripped slightly, as if freshly etched. He blinked, heart skipping, and rubbed it away vigorously, dismissing it as a childish prank from one of the kids. Yet, a clammy unease clung to him like the damp fog outside. Returning to the living room, where the creaking oak floors groaned underfoot and the fire's flickering glow danced on faded wallpaper, he noticed oddities. A history book he'd left on the armrest, now tucked on a high shelf, out of reach. A fleeting shadow slipping past the rain-lashed window, too substantial for a bird. During the cleanup, as dishes clattered in the sink and the scent of lemon soap mingled with leftover gravy, Siobhan pulled him into the hallway, her freckled face pale under the dim bulb. "Ronan, love, the family's deeper in debt than I let on," she confessed in a hushed tone, her hands twisting a tea towel. "Gran left an inheritance, but there are complications. Disputed wills, maybe even forgery claims from distant cousins." Her eyes, usually sparkling with mischief, held a moral weight, hinting at temptations to bend rules for financial relief. Ronan nodded, his mind racing through ethical dilemmas he'd taught in classrooms but never faced personally. As evening descended and the fog thickened into an opaque shroud, muffling the village sounds, Ronan showered again to clear his head. Emerging, he found the mirror fogged anew, this time with their watching scripted in bold strokes. Confronting the nieces yielded wide-eyed denials, their innocence convincing. Driven by growing paranoia, he climbed the narrow stairs to the attic. Flashlight piercing the musty gloom filled with the scent of mothballs and aged paper. Dusty trunks lined the space, and a loose floorboard creaked underfoot, revealing hidden ledgers, yellowed pages detailing shady loans from dubious lenders, confirming the debt's tangled web. A sudden scuffle overhead jolted him. From behind a stack of boxes emerged a disheveled squatter, his clothes ragged, eyes wild with desperation. The man had pried open a faulty skylight weeks ago, seeking shelter from the coastal storms, and had been eavesdropping on family conversations about the inheritance, perhaps plotting to exploit it. He lunged past Ronan, thundering down the stairs and vanishing into the misty night. Outside, Ronan spotted the neighbor's child giggling in the shadows, the true prankster behind the mirror messages, her innocent games accidentally unmasking the real threat. That night, locks were reinforced, and the family aired their financial woes openly around the fire, forging a tentative plan. But as Ronan gazed into the bathroom mirror later, wiping away fresh steam, it clouded once more without cause, the surface cool to the touch. With the squatter fled and doors barred, Ronan tried to sleep, but the mirror fogged again in the wee hours, its unspoken doubts seeping into his dreams like the relentless tide. Expanded, Chapter 4. The Silent Caller. Marie fiddled with the strings of fairy lights draped across her Parisian suburban apartment's balcony doors, their soft glow competing with the midnight neon from the city below. Horns blaring faintly, traffic weaving like luminous veins through the streets. The lingering aromas of her expat potluck wafted through the space. Spicy turkey tacos laced with cumin, the warm clove notes of mulled wine, and a hint of fresh baguettes slathered in cheese. As a freelance writer scraping by on travel articles and ghostwriting gigs, Marie had thrown this makeshift Thanksgiving to combat homesickness, inviting an eclectic group of friends and near strangers, fellow Americans, a few locals, and Luke, the graphic designer with tousled hair and a disarming smile she'd met at a cafe weeks ago. The evening buzzed with chatter, debates on politics back home, shared laughs over cultural mishaps, the clink of glasses toasting absent families. But midway through, as Marie refilled a bowl of guacamole, her phone vibrated on the counter, an unknown number. Answering, she heard only labored breathing, heavy and deliberate, sending a shiver up her spine despite the room's warmth. "Hello? Who is this?" she demanded, but the line went dead. Guests chuckled it off as a prank call or telemarketer glitch, but the phone rang again minutes later, the silence on the other end more oppressive, like an unseen presence pressing close. As the night wore on, the calls escalated, 5 in total, each a void of breath that felt intimately invasive. Amid the fading laughter, Marie caught Luke's concerned glances over a quiet coffee in the kitchen, amid the hum of the fridge and the distant siren wail. He opened up. "I've been through something similar," he admitted, his voice low, fingers tracing the rim of his mug. "An ex who stalked me after we split. Anonymous notes, calls like these. It messed with my head. His vulnerability ignited a spark between them, a tentative flirtation blooming into whispered confidences. But it also planted seeds of doubt. Was he too eager to connect or genuinely empathetic?" Using a tracing app on her phone, Marie pinpointed the signal to her building's basement, a cavernous underbelly she'd avoided since moving in. Excusing herself as guests mingled, she descended the dimly lit stairs alone, flashlight app glowing on her screen, the air growing thick with dust motes and a faint cloying perfume that didn't belong. Storage units loomed like silent sentinels, their metal doors dented and padlocked. In one ajar unit, she discovered chaos, scattered boxes of old clothes, photo albums, and, hidden behind a shelf, a makeshift surveillance setup with a camera feed streaming directly to her apartment above, capturing her living room in grainy detail. The caller stepped from the shadows then, a wiry man in his 50s, disheveled with stubble and frantic eyes. The former tenant, evicted months ago, who'd returned obsessively for lost heirlooms buried in the clutter. He'd used the calls to gauge when she was home, timing his searches. "I didn't mean harm," he pleaded, hands raised, but Marie's finger hovered over the emergency dial. He bolted up the stairs, vanishing into the night streets. Shaken, she called Luke down. Together, they dismantled the camera, his steady presence forging a deeper bond amid the adrenaline. Yet the violation lingered, her sanctuary tainted. By dawn, she'd decided to move, packing boxes under the harsh fluorescent lights, the city's pulse a reminder of hidden eyes everywhere. As Marie zipped the last suitcase, her phone rang once more, the silence on the line heavier than before, echoing with unspoken threats. Chapter 5. The Fading Echo. Dawn's first light filtered through the cabin's frost-rimed windows, shattering the melting snow into prismatic shards that glittered like scattered diamonds across the Canadian Rockies. The air outside was crisp, infused with the smoky residue of the dying fire, and the fresh bite of pine needles thawing under the sun. Birds trilled tentatively from the branches, their songs piercing the night's lingering hush as Elena set down the final letter, her fingers tracing its frayed edges before clicking off the recorder. The tales she'd narrated formed a haunting mosaic. Whispers in an outback barn unearthing familial betrayals, cryptic messages on a foggy Irish mirror exposing financial desperations, silent calls in a Parisian apartment revealing voyeuristic obsessions, all stark warnings that the veneer of holiday cheer could crack, unveiling the sharp perils of trust misplaced. Elena's own buried story clawed its way to the surface, uninvited yet inevitable. As a child in a bustling Toronto home during a raucous Christmas Eve decades ago, she'd awoken to footsteps in the hall, dismissed by her parents as Marcus playing tricks. But it was an intruder, an opportunistic thief who'd slipped in through an unlocked window, rifling drawers for valuables while the family sang carols downstairs. He'd fled with jewelry and cash, but the real theft was security. Marcus, blaming himself for leaving the latch open, had withdrawn, setting the stage for his later disappearance in that fateful blizzard. The guilt had shadowed Elena's career, driving her to uncover others' hidden truths as a proxy for her own. Rising on stiff joints that ached from the night's vigil, she approached the window, peering into the brightening world. The knock echoed again, softer and more insistent, heart-thudding. She unlatched the door to find her elderly neighbor, bundled in a parka, holding a bundle of misplaced mail with a sheepish grin. "Storm must have mixed things up," he said, handing over envelopes dusted with snow. Harmless, as benign as the emerging sunlight chasing away the fog. Yet, sifting through her own papers later, Elena's breath caught on an old, unopened envelope, postmarked from Toronto, its handwriting eerily similar to one of the anonymous letters, suggesting a tale she'd just read mirrored her family's unresolved mystery. Had Marcus's vanishing been no accident, but tied to that long-ago intruder? Shadows, she realized, didn't always dissipate with dawn. They lingered in echoes, waiting for the next storm. Elena sealed the letters into the trunk, whispering to the now silent cabin. "Share your stories, listeners. Sometimes, naming the dark is the only way to keep it at bay." The room fell still, save for the fading wind sighing through the pines, carrying secrets onward.